Deep in the shaded forests of eastern North America, there are plants that rarely draw attention. They grow low to the ground, appearing for a short time each year before blending back into the leaf litter. To most people walking through those woods, they pass unnoticed, just another part of the forest floor. But for those who knew what to look for, one detail stood out. Beneath the soil, hidden just below the surface, was a root unlike the others around it. When exposed, it revealed a deep yellow color, dense and striking against the dark earth. Over time, it came to be known as Goldenseal, a plant people began to value for its role in supporting the body, particularly in dealing with infections, inflammation, and digestive issues. That knowledge didn't stay in one place. It moved quietly at first, passed between those who understood its uses, gathered carefully from the same forest patches, and carried beyond the woods where it grew. The plant itself remained small, slow-growing, and easy to overlook, but the interest around it began to expand, and with that expansion, its reputation started to change. So how does something that begins as a hidden forest remedy grow into one of the most talked about roots of its time, and then almost disappear from everyday knowledge? We will explore all that in today's video. Welcome to Lost Green Lore. If you enjoy this kind of content, you will really help us out if you could like the video and hit that subscribe button. Thank you. Now moving on. Long before it appeared in shops or labeled bottles, Goldenseal was already part of established healing practices. Indigenous communities across eastern North America had been using the plant for generations, working with preparations made from the root for skin conditions, digestive discomfort, and infections. The plant was not treated as a cure for everything. It had specific uses, applied in specific ways, based on observation and experience built over time. That knowledge did not remain isolated. As European settlers expanded into the same regions, they encountered both the plant and the ways it was being used. Over time, Goldenseal began moving into early American herbal practice, eventually becoming part of a medical movement known as eclectic medicine. Physicians within this system focused on plant-based treatments and began prescribing Goldenseal in more formalized preparations, including tinctures and powdered extracts. By the 19th century, the plant had established a steady presence in apothecaries and medical references. It was often described as a tonic for mucous membranes, particularly in the respiratory and digestive systems. Its bitterness, a characteristic linked to its alkaloid content, was associated with stimulating digestive processes, while its traditional applications for inflammation continued to shape how it was used. From there, its reach began to expand. What had once been gathered from specific forest patches was now being traded more widely. Dried roots moved through regional markets, and demand began extending beyond local use. Harvesting increased to supply this growing interest, connecting the plant more directly to commercial exchange. As Goldenseal moved deeper into commercial medicine, something subtle began to change. It was no longer just a plant used for specific conditions. Its reputation started expanding into something much broader. 19th century medical texts already described Goldenseal as a tonic for mucous membranes, particularly in the respiratory and digestive systems. But once it entered the growing patent medicine market, those focused uses began to blur. Manufacturers were not limited by strict regulations, and products were often promoted as solutions for multiple, unrelated problems at once. A single bottle could be marketed for digestion, fatigue, infections, and general health support. All at the same time, Goldenseal fit perfectly into that system. Its known effects on the body, especially its bitter compounds that stimulate digestion, and its traditional use for inflammation, made it easy to position as something broadly beneficial. Advertisements and product labels began presenting it less as a targeted remedy and more as a reliable, all-purpose ingredient. Over time, repeated exposure to these claims shaped how people understood the plant itself. The shift wasn't driven by a sudden scientific discovery. It was driven by how the plant was described, sold, and remembered. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Goldenseal had become one of the most in-demand medicinal roots in North America. Demand rose to the point where wild harvesting intensified across forest regions, and supply chains expanded to keep up with the market. The plant had not changed. Its chemical composition remained the same, but the way people thought about it had. So for years, people focused on what Goldenseal seemed to do. fewer stopped to ask what was inside the plant that was responsible for those effects. The answer begins in the root itself. You see, Goldenseal contains a group of naturally occurring compounds known as alkaloids, the most studied being berberine, along with hydrastine and canadine. These are not unique to Goldenseal. Berberine, in particular, appears in several other plants, including barberry and Oregon grape. But in Goldenseal, it exists in concentrations that drew early attention from both herbalists and later researchers. Berberine has been studied for its antimicrobial activity. In laboratory settings, it has shown the ability to inhibit the growth of certain bacteria and fungi. It also interacts with the body in more complex ways, influencing enzymes and cellular pathways linked to inflammation and metabolism. These properties help explain why traditional uses of Goldenseal often centered around infections and irritation in mucous membranes. But the deeper you look, the more specific the picture becomes. These compounds do not act as universal cures. Their effects depend on dosage, preparation, and how the body absorbs them. In fact, one of the challenges researchers have noted is that berberine is not easily absorbed when taken orally, which limits how much of it actually reaches the bloodstream. This is where the earlier reputation begins to shift. Goldenseal's effects were real, but they were not limitless. The same compounds responsible for its activity could be isolated, studied, and compared across different plants. And once that happened, Goldenseal no longer stood alone as something uniquely powerful. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, medical practice was shifting toward laboratory-based science. Researchers were no longer relying only on whole plants. They were isolating specific compounds, testing them under controlled conditions, and measuring consistent outcomes. This approach made it possible to standardize treatments in a way traditional remedies could not. Goldenseal didn't disappear during this transition. It simply didn't fit the new system. Its active compounds could vary depending on where the plant was grown, how it was harvested, and how it was prepared. One batch might be stronger than another. Dosage was difficult to control with precision. For physicians working within an emerging scientific framework, that variability became a problem. At the same time, new drugs were being developed that targeted specific conditions more directly. Early antiseptics, followed later by antibiotics in the 20th century, offered predictable results against infections. Pharmaceutical compounds could be produced in controlled environments, ensuring that each dose behaved the same way every time. That consistency changed expectations. Hospitals, clinics, and medical schools began favoring treatments that could be measured, replicated, and scaled. Herbal remedies, including Goldenseal, gradually moved out of mainstream medical practice and into smaller, specialized circles. There was no single moment when Goldenseal was removed or rejected. It was still being used, still being sold, still being harvested. As modern medicine advanced, it no longer occupied the same space it once did. But as wild populations declined and modern medicine moved in a different direction, Goldenseal did not disappear completely. What happened is that it shifted into a different space, one where reputation often travels further than evidence. By the late 20th century, Goldenseal had become a common ingredient in herbal supplements. Capsules, tinctures, and blended formulas began appearing in health stores, often marketed for immune support, digestion, and general wellness. In many of these products, Goldenseal was paired with other herbs, such as echinacea, reinforcing the idea that it played a role in helping the body respond to illness. But alongside these uses, a new claim began to spread. Goldenseal was said to help people pass drug tests. The idea gained traction in the 1990s and early 2000s, circulating through word of mouth and eventually across early internet forums. The claim suggested that Goldenseal could cleanse the body or mask substances in the urine. It became one of the most widely repeated beliefs associated with the plant. Researchers eventually tested that claim under controlled conditions. Studies found no evidence that Goldenseal could alter drug test results in any reliable way. Despite that, the idea persisted. It continued to appear in discussions, advertisements, and supplement marketing long after it had been investigated. This is where the pattern becomes clear. Goldenseal's reputation had always been shaped by how it was described as much as how it was used. From early patent medicines to modern supplements, its image expanded through repetition, not always through verification. The plant itself had not changed. but the story surrounding it kept evolving. And in many cases, the story traveled further than the science. In the end, Goldenseal did not disappear. It moved from forests to markets, from medicine to supplements, from common knowledge to something most people rarely hear about. A plant once treated like a cure for everything now sits quietly at the edges of awareness. So what do you think? Should we make efforts to bring it back, or should we just forget about it since we have alternatives? Share your thoughts in the comments section below, leave a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more amazing videos like this one.